Welcome to Mana's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 13, The Paladin of the Holy Kingdom. Once Ainz made his move, victory was all too easy. After wiping out the demi-humans attacking the city and finishing a couple of other things, Ainz returned to his own room. One of those things was to show his face at Caspin's chambers and ask him for some minor favors in the future. The long and short of it was that after trampling the demi-human encampment underfoot, he had no issue with giving them the leftover rations and everything else magic items accepted. Since Ainz had devastated the demi-human camp by himself, then the spoils from the demi-humans should have rightfully belonged to him. Dumping them into the exchange box would have yielded quite a tidy sum. However, if he monopolized it all, the goodwill he had so painstakingly built up might end up losing its value. That being the case, he ought to write it off as an investment and give it all to the Holy Kingdom. Of course, there might be valuable magical items among the loot, and he had no intention of giving those up. Normally, Ainz would have gone to the camp by himself and used greater magic vision, detect magic, and other such divination spells to examine the scene, but he felt that there was no need to do so. In addition, Demiurge ought to have investigated what magic items the demi-humans possessed ahead of time. Even if something had slipped the net, there ought to have been nothing there which could harm Ainz. If there was, then it would have been more eye-catching. After that, he went to recover the equipment from those three demi-humans. As expected, nobody had dared loot the corpses, and so Ainz recovered their magical items without incident. Of course, he had an idea of how powerful those items were from the mana they contained, but he still held out hope for something bizarre or unusual. He dumped them onto the bed and prepared to magically investigate each and every one of them, but he had something he needed to do first. Now then. He deliberately made noise. Part of that was to psyche himself up, but there was another meaning to it. There was something he needed to do before sending the message to Demiurge. Ainz took out a scroll Demiurge brand and cast a spell, whereupon a pair of bunny ears sprouted from Ainz's head. He used them to check for nearby sounds, and it seemed like there was nobody hiding to spy on him. However, that was not enough to put him at ease. After all, there was magic, such as the second-tier spell Silence, which could eliminate sound, and then there were also thief skills, so it was too early to conclude that there was nobody around, just because he could not hear anything. It's thanks to Demiurge's farm which allows us to obtain raw materials easily that I can use scrolls this casually. Dumping large quantities of produce into the exchange box means we can make back the gold spent on the scrolls without any problems. I've thought about this before, but I have a good feeling about the various ways in which Nazarick is developing. They could still use the ordinary parchment from this world for first-tier spells like Rabbit's Ear. One would need Yggdrasil materials to go any higher. However, part of the supply problem had already been solved. While it was true that they could only be used as substitutes for up to third-tier scrolls, Demiurge had already done a great deal of work. The first and most indisputable thing was that when considering everything that had been done until now, he was the most deserving of commendation for his contributions. Next would be Albedo and her perfect management of Nazarick. Ainz then went on to use his ability to create lesser undead, and brought forth a wraith. Check the surroundings and see if anyone's spying on me. After receiving the order, the wraith left the room without opening the door. Wraiths had astral bodies, and so they could move straight through walls and other such obstacles. Still, there was a limit depending on how thick those walls were, so it was hardly unlimited, but the thickness of the room's walls was no problem for it. Ainz focused his mind on the ears he had sprouted. Even if there was a skillful thief lying in wait, could they really remain motionless if an undead creature suddenly appeared, especially if it was surrounded by an aura of fear? In addition, they would need a concealment ability that could hide them from detection by a wraith. Of course, deceiving low-tier undead was easy, but if someone actually possessed these abilities, then they must be very capable indeed. Ainz concluded that there could not be such a person. If there was someone like that in this nation, then they should have had them take part in the previous two battles. That said, I can't rule out the possibility that someone like that might be wary of me, and thus lying in wait. Still, given that woman's personality, it shouldn't be possible if there was someone like that. It wouldn't be unusual for Demiurge to inform me about them. It would not be unusual. As he thought of those words, Ainz wondered, is that really the case? Surely Demiurge would not have felt that Ainz would have understood even if he did not say anything, right? The more I think about it, the more my stomach hurts. If such a mistake had resulted, then he ought to gather his resolve and sit Albedo and Demiurge down for a good chat. Eventually, the undead being returned. Was anyone there? The undead being replied in the negative. Ainz's ears had not picked up any suspicious sounds either. Is that so? Then hide in the walls and keep an eye on the surroundings. After watching the undead being enter a wall, Ainz mentally prepared himself. Now then, I'll be casting message next. It was a simple thing, but he could not bring himself to do it. He felt like an employee who knew he would be scolded by his boss after returning to the office. Still, he could not stay this way forever. His heart would also be heavy if Demiurge contacted him first. Time to do it, me. After cheering himself up, he sent a message to Demiurge. He had rehearsed what he wanted to say in his head countless times, and had run more than enough simulations. All he had to do now was say it. However, the message connected before he could breathe in deeply to ease his stress, or rather, there was practically no delay between casting the spell and opening a channel to Demiurge. The response had been way too fast. Demiurge, is that you? Indeed it is, Ainz-sama. Yumu. He had practiced this many times. All he had to do now was say it. I was wondering if you had any questions about the divergence of my actions from the report, and so I contacted you. Well, I understand what you want to say. I feel that Albedo ought to be present as well if there are detailed questions. Return to Nazarick without delay. I will be returning presently as well. We'll meet in the log cabin on the surface. Understood. Then I will contact Albedo from my end. Ah, please do. He immediately cut off the message. After that, Ainz sighed deeply. Ah, that's good. He didn't sound mad. Ah, that was scary. What should I do if a talented subordinate gets mad at me? He had thought. Ainz's heart was full of fear. In order to put himself at ease, he channeled new strength into his faltering body and stared at the wall. The race mission was complete. Thanks to friendly fire being on, he could destroy the undead like Shaltier had, but there was no need to waste his strength. Ordering it to return was also a simple task. Incidentally, there was no need to speak either. He could simply issue a mental command. In that way, he could break the tenuous link between them. That said, there were countless such links stretching back towards Irantal. Over there, he was not confident of being able to give a clear order without speaking it. That much was true. However, Ainz had made very few undead in this place, so issuing a clear-cut command would be simple enough. Disappear. Now then, to return to Nazarick for a while. After this would come a very frightening task, a task of deception that had to be completed. He would have liked someone else to handle it if he could, but that was impossible. Besides, who could he hand it to? He touched the magic items from the 3 demi-humans on the table, in the hopes of clearing away his unease. Phew. They're weak, they're cheap, but still, obtaining magic items in this world makes me happy. Well, maybe I'm not as happy as Pandora's actor would be, but it does feel like I enjoy magic items too, huh? The first thing he did was appraise the magic items belonging to the 4-armed demi-human. Among them was the armband that had protected against Ainz's instant death spell, and its name was the Death Guard armband. It could grant immunity to death magic once a day. Ainz picked it up and twirled it in his hand several times, then put it back on the table. Boring. If only there were better items. Now then. Just as he was about to set out, he heard the sound of knocking on the door. A voice from the outside said, "Your Majesty, this is Neia." Ainz immediately inspected himself. Then he looked around the room to ensure that his bearing was that of the absolute sovereign, that was the Sorcerer King. After that, he slowly settled himself into a chair, and the pose he adopted was King Ainz number 24. Enter. He did his best to speak in a low, weighty voice. This change in pitch was also the result of repeated practice. The door opened, and Neia, her injuries now recovered, entered the room and bowed to him. I am deeply grateful to be granted permission to enter, Your Highness. I have come here in order to discharge my duties as a squire. Yumu. I am glad you came, Miss Baraja. But there is no need to fulfill your squire's obligations today. While your wounds might have healed, the fatigue of the battle must. Ah, it's been taken care of, Ainz thought. The potion he had used back then was one which removed both fatigue and exhaustion. It was a potion that inferior, his skin dry and rough, had praised to the heavens. I am able to fulfill my obligations as a squire, thanks to your Majesty's power. Also, I am very happy to be allowed to stay by your Majesty's side. Neia smiled. There was a smirk. One's body would naturally go on the defensive in the face of a hostile or evil smile, but Ainz's kingly poise was unbreakable. Is that so? However, I must return to the Sorcerer Kingdom for a while to handle some critical tasks. I apologize for wasting your trip. I see. She looked very sad, but she did not look cute at all. All he could think was that she was glaring at him. However, Ainz had already thought of a way to deal with Neia. All he had to do was close his eyes. That way, her eyes would not frighten him anymore. Speaking of which, I am glad that you are well, that you are alive, Miss Baraja. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. All this is thanks to your power. In particular, without this suit of armor, I might not have been able to hold out until your Majesty arrived. But you didn't hold out, you died. Well, all's well that ends well. Come to think of it, I heard she was fighting on the city walls, so giving her that armor which could defend against ranged attacks was the right choice. Phew. Well, that is good to hear. How about the bow? Did you show off his power to the masses? Yes, many people saw the amazing power of this bow, although they're all dead now. What? I see, so that's what happened. What a shame. He had failed again. Ainz was filled with a profound sense of regret. If everyone who saw it was dead, it was no different from nobody seeing it at all. Maybe I should give up on trying to promote rune weapons, Ainz thought. Still, I think there ought to be more chances for it. Even if this plan fails, it doesn't mean I've lost anything, and there will be great benefits if it succeeds. I am sure that without the gear which your majesty lent me, I would be in heaven with the others. Thank you very much, your majesty. Ainz sensed that her words came from the heart, and so Ainz thought, well done. Of course, he could not express that emotion. He had to keep showing her ruler's poise, after all. Pay it no heed. All you need to know is that a master's duty is to protect his followers. Ainz cracked his eyes open a fraction to study her reaction. Neia's face had twisted slightly when she had heard the word follower. It was probably not anger, but it felt like some kind of unhappiness. If her present attitude and the flow of the conversation were to be trusted, that was not the case. In other words, opening his eyes had been a mistake. Ainz closed his eyes again. Thank you very much, your majesty. Also, the people whom your majesty saved also wish me to express their gratitude to you. Oh, all right. Ainz struggled to hide the way he felt. You need not worry about it. I simply happened to save them because they were there. However, I hope they will not expect this good fortune to repeat itself. I use quite a lot of mana in this battle, so I might not be able to help next time, you know. Understood, I will convey your message to them. However, that's right. Please inform these people that I am glad to receive their gratitude, and now, Miss Baraja, I apologize, but I really must be going. After this, yes, can you come back in 4 hours' time? Yes. No problem at all. Then, please excuse me, your majesty. Neia left the room, and Ainz opened his eyes. Her gratitude does seem quite genuine. Looks like I've got one person at last. No, as the saying goes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Should I give out free healing potions as advertisement? That ought to win me more gratitude, but can it make up for the mistake with the rune weapons? Ainz took out the purple potion. This was Inferior's potion. Its quality was slightly inferior to that of Yggdrasil-made potions, and it was still in the development phase. However, its effects might catch up in the future, or he might end up being able to make Yggdrasil's potions. It would have been too wasteful to spread the news of Yggdrasil's red potions for nothing, so I didn't use them. Still, I don't know whether people who are used to blue potions can accept purple potions. Using them here and collecting the results sounds like a good plan. Right now, he intended to have Nazarick conceal the potions which Inferior and his grandmother had made. He did not plan to distribute the technology. However, that plan might change in the future, and the time might come when he could sell that potion. It would be good to prime the pump for such a situation. This is complicated. There's merits and demerits on both sides. Frankly speaking, the fact that he's discussing his sex life with me is causing me a lot of problems. I mean, at least they're not doing it in front of me, but wouldn't it be bad if word got out that he was talking about his wife? In the first place, why is Inferior even discussing this with me? Is it because he has no male relatives and is far away from the city he had lived in until now, so he thought that he had nobody to talk to? For all I know, he might be thinking that Narbril and I have that sort of relationship. But he ought to know that I'm a skeleton. While Ainz had thought of spying on the two of them at night to satisfy his curiosity, he felt that doing so would change his attitude towards the two of them, so he had curbed the impulse. However, it took a great deal of effort to shake off the curiosity that flashed through his mind every time Inferior came to discuss it with him. I remember something about it feeling very good, so he was asked to do it a lot of times. Could it be that the reason he made so much of that potion some kind of nutrient supplement, I think, and then gave it to me was because... In any case, he had decided to give it to those two lizardmen, so they would work hard on making more rare children. The fruits of technology are first applied to the military, then sex and medicine. Is that true? Time to go back.